as a in Australia, and it was owned by the plant was owned and this fed power to Queensland and to the aluminum smelter down there, or as they say, aluminium. And there were 15 companies that owned it. We would meet periodically in Japan, sometimes in Australia. And so after one of the meetings, Monique and Heidi and I decided, well, let's I had them come, and we took about 2 weeks and traveled around Japan, maybe 10 days, something like that. And so we just did it informally. We didn't buy a rail pass or anything. We started in Tokyo, and if you're like most places in the world, there's the regular tourism, and then we were in the corporate stuff. The first time I was there, the guy from Rio Tinto took us to dinner, and it was $1,500 for 5 of us for a light supper. So if you take a taxi from Narita into downtown Tokyo, it can be $400 to $500, literally. So that's why most people take the train. So it is, and we stayed in a hotel. It was nice, but it was $400 a night, so anyway. So we headed south. This is at a station in one of the stations in Tokyo. And this is, like Craig said, this is the original Shinkansen from the 50s. And they were on local service.
Before you move on, notice the 7 and the 6 on the platform. Tell them what that's for, Russ.
They will stop. You can stop, and that would be this car number 6 or car number 7, and they stop. And I have another picture of that. They stop exactly there. You queue up right there, and you walk right on. That's how they have to handle it when they have these big crowds.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So this is on one of the standard Shinkansens. Now this is full standard gauge. But it again, mid morning, it's you don't try to travel in rush hour because it is very, very crowded. Here's one of the more modern ones. This was built in the 1990s. This was pretty new back then. It's a Model 300, and they're very, very, as Craig said, very smooth, and they arrive on time exactly. Yeah, here this shows this gentleman is going to be he's going to go in the lead door of car number 9.
Yeah.
And the Japanese use, actually there's 4 different types of writing you'll see on some of the signs. You notice they have Arabic numerals, and then there's this sort of a Japanese script that they have. There's 2 types of Japanese script, and then there's a Chinese character. So what we did is we got a map, and the script is hard to read, but the Chinese characters are pretty logical. You find a map and you see, oh, okay, we're going to go to this place, and that Chinese character looks like that, and then you find the Chinese character on the sign if there were no names in English, and then you just go from there. This was a car attendant on the Shinkansen. We were going from Tokyo to Kyoto, as Greg talked about. This was a little bit later Shinkansen that was for the second model. You can see it's a little bit more streamlined, and this one was built in the 1970s. And here's a model built in the 1980s. They kept getting more and more streamlined. Very successful train though. And here's a model built in the 1990s. As Craig said, very streamlined. You don't even when they go by, you don't even feel it if they're at speed. Yep. Now we took the subway, and again during rush hour, you can see the 3 dots are where the doors end up, and they stop exactly there, but it can be extremely crowded. And there you see a number 5. And then you see some of the Japanese script and also Chinese characters. Mm-hmm. And then that's it's for Naka Meguro, and that's a suburb in southwest, a nice suburb in southwest Tokyo that we were going to visit. Very, very good subway system. I believe this one is in This was in Hiroshima. We took a subway around. It was interesting. We just kind of went to the station and bought tickets as we went because we weren't sure of our schedule. But as Craig said, if you're in the large cities, the people do speak English. The Japanese businessmen that we worked with said that they were taught that Japan was a great country and it was very powerful and everything. But the biggest disappointment they had when they went overseas is that nobody spoke Japanese. And that's because they for 250 years, they were pretty isolated until I think the mid 1850s or late 1900s, something like that. Very isolated country, very internally focused, and they didn't have territories, and they hadn't expanded worldwide, so people did not learn Japanese. So they are learning English and some of the other languages. This is like Craig was showing, this is some of the Cape gauge trains, standard trains. These are electrics. And then we got on, I wanted to ride one. Monique liked the Shinkansen, but I said, we got to try one of these. Just a standard sort of a local passenger train. We traveled after we got to, we went to Osaka, Kyoto, and then Hiroshima. And then we just said, well, let's take one of these locals, because we went down to Fukuoka, which is it's the city that's the furthest south on the mainland of Japan, Fukuoka, and there we got a plane back to Australia. But here we're on the Cape gauge standard train, and it wanders. It was built in the 1800s, so it kind of wanders through the countryside, like a standard railroad would. The Shinkansens are very straight. They go right through the mountains. They go across bridges. They so that they can achieve these very, very high speeds. So it's two different railway systems, and then they just meet at various cities. So you transfer between the trains. So here we're crossing a river into, let's see, this is going into Onoseki. So that's the town we're coming into. And they go, but again, you can see it wanders. So they do, 50, 60 miles an hour, but nothing like the Shinkansens. And this is Hitaskai Ushu, the town here. And then I put this in just to show this is a domestic version of the 747-400. Most of the other, I'm not sure anybody else bought the domestic version. The normal 747-400 has the advanced wing, also winglets, and that's what Northwest Airlines had, Delta had, everybody, most of the airlines had. I think they sold almost 1,000 of them. But this is a domestic version, relatively short range. It'll seat 500 people, and this is down at Fukuoka, and this flight is going to Tokyo. And you can see the numbers.
And
vehicle.
Ross, can I?
Yes.
Question. Sorry to interrupt you.
No problem.
But I'm really curious. Wouldn't they be better off internally with a number of smaller planes?
They move that quantity of people around. Okay. And rather than flying, say, 2 757s or 3 DC-9s, they just load everybody up especially at rush hour. Because of the landing slots at Narita or the other airports are so tight. But yeah, you'd think so. But so that's why ANA and I'm sure the others have bought these domestic versions. And they seat 500 people in regular class. So, but you'll notice that 11% of the travel in Japan is by road, 15% by air, but 73% is by train. So clearly, it's a horse apiece. Whether you want to, if you're in Fukuoka, if you want to go to Tokyo, it's several hours on the train, but then you get downtown. if you fly, then you end up at Narita or one of the other airports, and you have to get downtown. So it's most of the people do travel by train.
Before we headed for Japan, I asked Kwanzaa, whom Bob would remember. Kwanzaa was a Korean lady who was one of our pastors at University Lutheran Church of Hope, and she had studied in Japan. She could speak Japanese. And I asked her before we went, I said, now, should I drive? And she said, absolutely not. And I said, why? Is the driving terrible? And she said, no, there's no place to park. No kidding. Don't do it. Don't even think about it.
Yeah. It's there's 80 million people in a relatively small, something smaller than the state of California. So but very organized and very neat. But it is a little difficult to travel because of the language. And if you get off the, you probably saw that, Craig, if you get away from the main thoroughfares, sometimes there aren't English signs.
Well, when we were in Tokyo, we could turn on the TV and find CNN.
Yes.
But nowhere else in the country could we find English language on TV, not even in Kyoto, which is a good sized town. So what we do is we find a baseball game. You don't have to understand.
That's right.
You know what's going on.
Yeah, that's good.
We turned into big fans of the Hiroshima Carp. And those fans are nuts. They are yelling and stomping all the time. They never shut up. Boom, boom. Yeah, whoa, whoa. Just all the time.
Yeah, they love baseball. They love baseball.
Sure do.
But it fits the they're very organized, very neat, polite, and baseball is very organized. So you can understand why they I think it was introduced by the Army after in Reconstruction after 1945. Yeah, after World War II.
Mm-hmm.
So
great ball players.
Yeah. So but it's a very interesting country, and very, very like I said, very friendly people. But it is one of the more difficult countries to travel in, just because of everything works well. But if you get off the beaten path, it's probably better to have a guide.
Yeah.
So,
well, for me, it's like being in a Western European country where you don't speak the language, because the standards for communication, transportation, for accommodation, for food, all that, water, you can drink the water. It's not like being in a place where the water and the food are not really secure, and the hotel accommodations would be crummy or something like that. So their standards for those things are pretty high. And like you said,
absolutely.
The language can be a problem, but at Kyoto, when we went up to some of the shrine areas, these three young people, probably late high school or something, can we be your guides and practice our English? I said, sure, so just as sweet and nice as they could be. Show us around.
Yes.